So yesterday I released this video, very, very drunk, just called Lock Them Up, while being complete of how reason and is my lens fucked up? Okay, now it's fixed. Completely aware of how brazen and ideological it sounded, even though I was making this kind of convoluted argument where I was like, individual freedom is really good, but in order to ensure freedom for individuals, you also have to ensure public safety. And really, when you think about it, that is only protecting law-abiding individuals, but also the laws as they are morally wrong because they don't allow individuals to take their, you know, take on the full scope of their lives or their potential. That it limits them. There are less options for them to live happy lives or potentially fail in so doing. Like I was making this really convoluted argument in the video, and I don't completely disagree with like the broader notion that I'm purporting, but I talked about El Salvador, and I talked about El Salvador using data that is kind of sketchy. And what I mean when I say that is I'm going off of essentially like statistics that are counted by a government that is, for all intents and purposes now, a dictatorship, or at the very least, like a authoritarian democracy, and that's being generous. Um, and if you look a little bit deeper into it, the data is a lot more conflicting on El Salvador. And there's some broader context there in that country that I think makes the waters even more murky. Namely, the fact that there are these backdoor deals with the gangs that the president has attempted to make or is likely making. Um, and that makes things a little bit more complicated. You also look at the history of the region and other dictatorships that have preceded this one in nearby countries or other countries in Latin America, namely Chile, Argentina, Bolivia, Peru, especially, um, you know, Guatemala in the past. This heavy handed approach towards gangs is not something new. And in the case of those countries, in most respects, it miserably failed. Um, Even in the United States today, we have mass incarceration in this country, and it has not led to less recidivism, it has led to more recidivism. And Europeans in my comments and other places on the internet will be quick to say that this is due to some terminal rot in US culture. Um, and I can try to be charitable to those arguments, but I think a lot of those people, generally, what they're trying to say when they say that is that it is a non white culture, which I don't think I need to explain to you why that's kind of a bad thing to say. Um, but, to be more charitable to them, um, the ones who aren't making an overtly racist argument, uh, there is something to be said about the prevalence of individualism and other toxic aspects of that individual culture. Okay, sure, that's fine. And we can debate about those things, but I think the fundamental thing here is that this heavy-handed approach has mixed results and also has not necessarily netted the results that the central government in El Salvador might want us to believe. Undeniably, crime has gone down, but the question is exactly how much and for how long will they be able to do that? I don't really know. And also, of course, there is the fact that many innocent people have been arrested without being able to speak to their families, without um, having access to due process. And I mean, that's pretty messed up. I can only imagine, you know, what would have happened if I was making the kind of jokes that I've made online at various points, and I lived under a system like that. I would probably be in jail right now just for making jokes. Um, of course, if I did live under that kind of system, I'd probably be less likely in the first place to make those jokes. But maybe not. Maybe I would do it anyway just for the sheer catharsis of saying something that I'm not supposed to say. That sounds kind of like me. Um, and so it's a complicated thing. All of this is an extremely complicated thing, or series of things, I mean. Um, and when I look at like an issue like this, or really most issues these days, I can't help but feel like there's so many moving parts, be it, socioeconomic factors, cultural factors, how much information we are seeing and from whom, the information we're not seeing, how it's all being presented, um, broader like geopolitical forces at play, um, the fallibility of human beings. There's so much going on that I look at an individual issue and like I don't. Oh, okay, sorry, I was letting Soph into the house, but um, I look at an individual issue and I just don't know what to do with it. Like, I don't really know what to think. I don't really know what I think. I have some general feelings about different stuff. I think that's fair to say. Um, there are certain issues that I have a hard and fast preference for that I truly, truly believe in, and refuse to change my opinion on. But that's like three things. And they're the three things that are probably the most contentious between me and my audience. Um, a lot of my audience doesn't like what I have to say about those issues, and namely, um, legalizing all drugs, having better public transportation, and proprietary software. I don't, and I guess you could also, as like a 3.5, three and a half issues I really care about, the advancement of LGBT and so on. Um, Not the 4chan board, the group of people. Um, and so, like, these are kind of the things that I care about. And I care about them because they directly affect my life. I know that there are people who I care about who would have their lives invariably improved by the broad legalization of drugs. And I think most people would actually have their lives improved by that. And I have attempted to use empirical data, philosophical arguments, um, and scientific data to make the case for that. Um, but it's something that a lot of people will simply not agree with me on. They have a intuitive revulsion to it, and there is so much propaganda on the issue that exists that if I were to show them 10 different scientists with findings that are largely unbiased, to support my points, I would be labeled as the equivalent of an anti-vaxxer. No, you just don't believe in the facts. You're cherry picking information. Um, Without even looking at any of my sources, this is the kind of thing that they'll say without engaging in the arguments in an honest manner. This is the kind of thing they'll say. Um, and of course, that's not everybody. There are reasonable discussions to be had on that front. My opinion is not the only opinion. Um, but that's kind of the point of this video, is that my opinion is not the only opinion, and it's for sure not the right opinion on a hell of a lot of things. Like, I just don't know what to think a lot of the time. But that is one issue that I will fight tooth and nail on with people, simply because I've spent so much time thinking about it. I have the lived experience in regards to the issue, so I know on a personal level how it works, even though I don't participate in that sort of stuff now. Um, I've seen it all throughout my life, from various characters, of various economic and social stratas. So I've seen all sides of the issue in a very personal way. I've also spent a lot of time, and I mean a lot of time, consuming the scientific data from both sides of the issue. Um, so yes, it is complicated, but I feel fairly confident, steadfast in my position, the same position that I've had basically for my whole life. But there aren't a lot of things like that for me. Um, I'll see El Salvador doing this weird, heavy-handed stuff, and then I'll go, oh, maybe something like that could work here. But also, we're probably not hearing the whole story. But also, that's not, the only representation we have of these kinds of policies. We could look at the incompetence and rampant crime in other countries that attempted the same things, and once again, it increased the problem, or at best, did very little. And so, I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is I'll make these political videos where I'm being boisterous and loud and going, this is what you ought to think, and this is why I think it, man, and I'm so loud, I'm so confident. And like, it's all kayfabe. Like, I don't know how many people watch these videos and think, oh, this is his most authentic self, but I got news for you. I don't act like that most of the time. Like, I act like that because it's entertaining to watch, and it's like it provides the viewer an interesting thought experiment. It gives you some information to nibble on and hopefully spit out something of your own in place of it, you know. But none of this is like hard and fast. None of this is the truest representation of what I think. Some of it is, and I'll be sure to let you know when that's the case. But um yeah, I mean, I don't want to give this, like, part of me doesn't really want to give this false impression that these really are my views. Because at the end of the day, I don't know what a lot of my views are. And I think that's okay. I don't think everyone needs to box themselves in to an ideology. I don't think everyone needs to categorize themselves. I don't think everyone needs to have an opinion on things. It might be fun to be opinionated, you know, for the appearance of itself or the exploration of these ideas at that particular time, but don't stick to them. Don't make it a part of your identity. I mean, I know I don't make any of this stuff a part of my identity, even the stuff I really, really believe in, even the stuff that I would consider myself fairly principled on. I don't make it a part of my identity because, I mean, for one, that's just kind of boring. Like, do you really have so little going on in your life and with yourself that you're going to make your political beliefs a part of your identity? Like, I I don't know what year we're living in. There's so much stuff to do these days, so many things to learn, places to go. I think you have to be especially uncreative to do something like that. I mean, more power to you if you truly believe in something, but like, I just think it's something you should reconsider, as far as your identity is concerned, especially because it sort of hodls growth when you think about it. Like, the more you identify with a belief, the more it's going to hurt when people criticize it. Because if someone criticizes a view that you have and it's a part of your identity, they're not just criticizing that view, they're criticizing you. They're criticizing something you've decided is a part of yourself. And that can be, really difficult to handle. Um, so, yeah, I mean, I think people should be cautious about this. They should be cautious about the things I say. They should be cautious about the things that they listen to. They should be cautious about the things that they think. Um, but ultimately, this stuff shouldn't be taken that seriously. Like, I can get in front of a camera and shout some nonsense about how mass incarceration is good, actually. But I could just as easily the next day shout some nonsense about how prison abolition is good, actually. And both perspectives would be of equal value. They would both be entertaining. They would both have merits, depending on how you look at them and the context. They would both have compelling data to argue for them. But at the end of the day, I'm not here to radicalize you. I am not here to make you think the way that I think. A lot of the time, I don't even know how I think. I'm here to make you think in general. And so, by all means, leave an angry comment down below. Leave a long diatribe that is in opposition to all of my central premises. But do so with the understanding that none of this is that big of a deal. Like, you and I are not the people in power. We are not even close to the echelons of power. And so is there that much responsibility on our shoulders to have the most objective opinion on this stuff to affect real world change? Probably not. And that's why I can say all this random nonsense. I can say this random nonsense because it's all random nonsense. It's all made up. And I think that's pretty cool.